of Ofori Atta the first is the 75th anniversary. And we know something historic is also going to happen today because Otumfuo Osei Tutu II will be in Akyems later this morning. My guest for us to talk about the history of this, what this means, what this symbolizes, is Professor Kwame Osei, his Vice Dean, Faculty of Arts, University of Cape Coast. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mama Viabuaji.
And congratulations on being the Vice Dean.
Thank you very much.
Because we've known you as the head of the history department.
I'm still the head of the history department. You can hold the two positions simultaneously.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about the 75th anniversary of the passing of Ofori Atta the first.
Okay.
What does this whole event mean? What should we know about it?
Well, it is significant because most Ghanaians, contemporary Ghanaians who haven't done history, do not know of the exploits of Ofori Atta the first, the roles that he played as a legislator, as a statesman, as a chief, and as an educator. So I think it is important because on Ghana history since 1987 had taken a nosedive. Is now an elective subject. So the interest in Ghana history had waned. Yeah. Most Ghanaian students have gone through secondary and university education without learning about history of Ghana. So you don't know what has happened in the past, and the past has relevance for today. And so in relaunching or celebrating the 75th anniversary of Ofori Atta, and then also relaunching a book written on him, to me is very, very significant because it is going to enable Ghanaians who don't know much about this man to read about him, because Ghanaians are curious. So some of them will be asking questions. What was it? What is it about this man that after 75 years of his death, somebody will want us to celebrate him. Somebody will want us to read about him. So curious minds will try to read about him. And so they will get to know more about the man, Ofori Atta the first.
Most so of the things let me redirect that question to you, Prof. What is it about him that we should know after 75 years? Why is this such a big deal?
It's a big deal for the simple reason that this man, it was during his time as the king of Akyem that, in fact, Akyem gained prominence so far as modern Ghanaian colonial history is concerned. If you care, you see that most of his grandchildren and children were highly educated. He himself was an educated chief. You know, most of our chiefs were not educated, they were illiterates. And he was among the early literate chiefs in Ghana, in the Gold Coast. So he took the trouble upon himself to teach his children or educate his children. So he promoted education. Apart from that, he also had a good relationship with the colonial authorities and helped in ensuring that laws. He was a legislator. He was invited into the legislative assembly, and then also the Council of Chiefs at that time. And he helped in the passage of ordinances that governed the country at the time. Do you get me? And then also they collaborated with the authorities at that time to promote peace and harmony. And during the World War I, he also, with the support of other chiefs, help in providing support to the British colonial authorities by giving money, buying aeroplanes and what have you to support the war effort, which eventually ended in victory for the British, and so the Germans couldn't overcome us. He did a whole lot of things, and if you look at the fact that Ofori Atta was also in the thick of affairs in most of the things that happened, educational projects that happened during his time, or social projects that happened during his time. He contributed to them by way of debates in the Legislative Assembly. Godjesberg built Kolebu Hospital, Achimota School, and all these things. And he was part of the chiefs who supported the colonial government at that time, and more or less, he was on the forefront. So on the whole, you will see that the man was a great leader, no matter...
But did the people see at the time his greatness?
Normally, you see, people may not understand you at the time that you may be in power, but history may judge you after you have left the scene. It could be many, many years, because most of the information about you will come out, and people will now sit down, critically look at the data, analyze them, and then value them and see whether you were a great man or you were a failure. Do you get me? But from what we have studied about the man, what we have known about the man, indeed, if his contemporaries didn't see him as a great man, today, historians have seen that he was indeed a great man. He was somebody who contributed his bit towards the socio-economic development of the country during his time.
We're talking about this day, and we're looking ahead also because we know that the Asante-Hene will be in Akyem. What does that mean?
Yeah, the meeting of Asante-Hene and Okyenhene, Osagyefo, Amoatia, Ofori Panin today is very, very significant in the history of Ghana, because it is going to end over 3 centuries old intense rivalry that ever existed between the Akyems and the Ashantis. You know, historically, the Akyems and Ashantis had been rivals, and the relationship that had existed between them started from the time Ashanti was emerging as a state in the forest belt. Both Ashanti and Akyem are kingdoms that emerged in the forest belt. Akyem originally, Akyem comprised Kotoku, Bosome, and Abuakwa, and they were originally in the Adanse area, which is seen as the cradle of the Akyems. But because of political instability at the time, the Akyems decided to move away from that place. They migrated and moved to where they are now. Some of them were in the Kotoku in particular were in the area we call Asante-Akyem. And when Ashanti was also under the dominion of Denchura, and in 1699, between 1699 and 1701, Ashanti and Denchura went to war. Ashanti and some other vassals of Denchura, like Chufu, like Wasa, and then Sefi, formed a coalition and decided to rebel against Denchura. They did it successfully and succeeded. But in that war against Denchura, it was the Akyem that supported the Denchura against Ashanti. And Akyem didn't want Ashanti to emerge as a nation state, because it felt that for political and economic reasons and commercial reasons, Ashanti was going to compete with Akyem.
So this was all more of a power struggle.
Power struggle at that time. And subsequent to that, Ashanti emerged victorious, and subsequent to that, we saw a situation where Asante Osei Tutu I, Asante Osei Tutu I, waging war against the Akyem Kotoku to punish them for supporting Denchura, which resulted in the death of Osei Tutu and most of the Ashanti warriors at the time. And it created a state of instability in Ashanti itself for 3 consecutive years until Otumfuo Osei came to the throne in 1720. And then he also decided to avenge the death of the uncle. And he was a great warrior. He's called a champion, and he extended the territorial aggrandizement of Ashanti. But the first thing that he did was to avenge the death of the uncle, and Ashanti waged series of wars against the Akyem. This forced the Kotoku people to move away from where they were in Asante-Akyem area to Akyem Odad, and Asante now annexed that area, Asante-Akyem area, and gave the people the name Asante-Akyem. They added Asante to the Akyem, those who remain, who didn't go, and then also brought royals from Asante to come and rule some of the towns and villages and settle among the Akyems to more or less integrate them into the Asante society and kingdom. Then, subsequently, during the time of Asante Nikusi Obuodum and Osei Kwadwo, you realize that Ashantis continue to fight the Akyem together. That's Kotoku Bosome and Abuakwa. By this time, you see Abuakwa playing a leading role, and Abuakwa chiefs like Bakwante, Pobi, and Obrikran all fought with the Ashantis, and eventually Ashanti defeated them. But then they formed coalitions. The Akyem formed coalitions with the vassals of Ashanti like Chifo, like Sefi, and then Wasa, and even with Adan and Gay. You are ever, so you know Adan and Gay, and even appeal to the Alafin of Oyo at one time to come to their aid, and even the Krobo. So they were fighting among them for a protracted warfare existed between them, and so the hostility lingered on, and it was an intense one. That's why scholars like Finn describe the relationship between the Ashanti and Akyem then as what? Intense hostility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My guest is Professor Kwame Osei from the University of Cape, because he's a history professor. He's Vice Dean, Faculty of Arts at the University of Cape Coast. And we're learning about the relationship between the Akyems and the Ashantis. As you may well know by now, Otumfuo Osei Tutu II will be with the Okyenhene today, and it's been described as an historic event. And this, we're learning that is going to end many years, decades of hostility. So it's interesting that we're learning the history of this whole. But so how come, they were all able to join one political party? Politics seemed to, it got them together somehow. Because we see the Akyems and we see the Ashantis all in one political party.
You see, in this world, you must not have a permanent friend and a permanent enemy. Looking at the circumstances at the time, you can change your mind. They say that it's only a fool who doesn't change his mind. I mean, the Akyem and the Ashantis at a point realize that their very survival in the country that we call today Ghana was being threatened. And so they have to forge an alliance so that they could resist it, and then could also compete for political power in this country when partisan party politics emerged in this country. So, and the people who played that role were J.B. Dankwa, who was member of the Big Six, and then Pauli and others. They were able to then convince the Asante-Hene of the time, Otumfuo Osei Tutu, because they saw that the CPP government, then led by Nkrumah, who had socialist inclinations, was going to sort of lord it over them and tyrannize them, and they didn't want that. Having been sovereigns over years, I mean the Ashanti and the Akyems, having been sovereign over years, they didn't want a situation. So there was one thing, that a common factor that united them together. So that explains why they have to come together. Yeah.
But we know the power that Otumfuo yields. We know the power that what he commands as well. If you take Okyeman and Asante-man, which one is more powerful?
I think you hadn't asked me this question, because I don't want to I don't want to dabble in that politics that goes on in this country. This one is great, this one is that. I am an Ashanti myself. Do you get me?
Okay.
But then if you want to talk about greatness and power in terms of territorial expanse, in terms of wealth and what have you, then Asante-Akyem, and then in terms of number of chiefs under the authority of Asante, number of chiefs who swear oath of allegiance to Asante-Akyem, then definitely, in comparison with that of Okyenhene, then definitely Asante-Akyem.
So let me ask you this: the relationship between the two, Otumfuo and the Okyenhene, seemed to be, because recently we saw them play golf together, for instance, and the pictures were widely circulated. A lot of people were happy about it. Who stands to gain the most with this reunion, if you like?
First and foremost, I would say that the country Ghana stands to gain most, because it is going to foster peace, tranquility among the Akyems and then the Ashantis. Let me say, two leading Akan group of people within the country. So Ghana stands to gain most. And then the two people, the Akyem and then the Ashanti, will also benefit from it. So that is what I can say with respect to this.
Are we going to see this as, you know, we love the pictures on all when we see the two together. We're counting down to their meeting today. We're excited that Otumfuo is leaving Kumasi and going to Abuakwa. Is this just on paper? Is this just in pictures, or we will see them do more together?
Well, I'm not privy to the programs that they have for this meeting.
Yeah, but I get it. I'm not even asking about today's event. I'm asking about going further in the future. The kind of relationship. Is it just taking pictures, visiting each other, or we will see some more collaborations?
The previous one, the first meeting, and the reciprocal visit by Asante-Akyem to Abuakwa today, sort of lays the basis. It's becoming the stepping stone for future cordial relationship between Ashanti and the Akyem Abuakwas. And I think that going forward from today, nobody can make political mischief of Akyem mafia, Ashanti factor.
Do you think it's going to end because the two have come together?
Sure. Now, what will be your basis for saying that? I have a problem with you, and today you decided to bury the hatchet and forge ahead as friends. You forget about the past. You put the past behind us. The past is only there to guide us so that you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. So, history had guided them. They saw what has happened, how bitterness can destroy you, how enmity can even allow your enemy to come and take your possession away. Do you get me? Because if there is enmity between you, there will be no unity, and the enemy exploits on that. So going forward, this is going to help one build the Danko Budija tradition, if you want me to go that way, because now Ashantis and Akyems are going to see themselves as more brothers than before. Suspicion and mistrust will now be eradicated, because hitherto there was suspicion and mistrust among these people. If you want me to illustrate this, I can use 1979 and then subsequently 1998 and even quite recently as examples. 79, even though Akyem and Ashanti predominantly belong to the UP tradition, but because of misunderstanding and suspicion and mistrust, the tradition split into two. We have this man, Victor Usu, leading PFP, and then Pauli, leading UNC. And when they went to the general elections in 1979, they lost to Liman, somebody who was even not known much in the country. Do you get me? He was a novice in Ghanaian politics, but he won. And they learned a big lesson. I think it is that has given a fillip to today's meeting, because subsequently they saw that I am a Casfordian. I am an alumnus of Casford. Our motto, one of the songs of our motto, divided we fall, united we stand. Do you get me? They have realized that divided they will fall, and then united they will stand. And so subsequently they decided never to let that happen again. So this is rather going to strengthen that resolve never to be divided politically again, as it happened in 1979. Do you get me? And then they also want to put a stop to political opponents of MPP always making reference to Akyem Mafia and then the Ashanti factor and all those things. So now, if anybody from Ashanti decides to contest for the presidency or any position in MPP, nobody will have a justification in saying that the Akyems are suspicious of Ashantis or Ashanti, and vice versa. That thing will be buried forever.
But people would always look at the people the president, for instance, surrounds himself with and make that conclusion. You can't take away the fact that people will still think that there's a certain mafia.
My dear sister, you will do the same thing. If you allow me and I'm to go into the politics of this country, from Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah up to today, every leader we have had during Osagyefo Dr. Nkrumah's time, most of the people who surrounded him were Nzimas, because he came from Nzima. Do you get me? And during Buzier's time, he also had people from Bonahafo and other places who surrounded him. Do you get me? During J.H. Kofo's time, you get the same thing. During Rawlings' time, Rawlings was accused many times. Have you heard about it? In 1988, there was a public Dankwa Freezer something lecture, which was delivered by the late Professor Dubois, and the title was The Ghanaian Sphinx. He accused ex-President Rawlings, who was then Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings and the head of state of Ghana, that all the military top hierarchies in this country, Chief of Defense Staff, Air Force Commander, IGP, Naval Commander, and all of them were Evers. He accused him, and General Anokwenu came out to rebut that. So every leader you have had, J.H. Kofo came, was his chief of staff not an Ashanti, where most of the people around him not Ashanti. So what are people talking about? If Akufo-Addo comes and we have some Akyems around him, in any case, let me ask you, I'm not doing politics, but I'm looking at it from historical perspective.
And I appreciate that.
Let me ask you, if you are, as you sit here today, you become a CEO, will you bring someone from Nigeria or from elsewhere to come and be your aide camp? You may definitely go for somebody that you trust, because in this country, people always have suspicion for one another, and because of tribalism thrives in this country, colonialism thrives in this country, nepotism thrives in this country. So people are not confident of other people. They are always suspicious. They think that this person will undermine me. He will leak information. As I sit here today, I have an experience in my own department as HOD. A document was put in a file, which I never knew of, which had never been received and minuted on. But somebody surreptitiously put it in the file and used it as a case. But for the fact that there were no stamps, there were no signature, because every correspondence must come to me, it must be registered and put in it must be registered in a letter, the letter receiver book and all these things. And then I myself must see it and minute on it, whatever action that.
So you would have been framed?
I would have been framed. So me, I will support everybody who comes to power and does not dispense with people he trusts. Because in this country, you have to be afraid of a lot of people. They always try to sabotage you, pull you down. Until this tendency of pull him down ceases, then these people are justified, from Kwame Nkrumah to Nana Akufo-Addo, to surround themselves with people they trust, because most people are not trustworthy.
So, Prof, you know, we hear a lot of things, not just because I'm a media person, but as an ordinary Ghanaian citizen, we hear things. And some of the things I've heard in the past is, for instance, between the two, the Okyenhene and the Asante-Hene, is that they don't meet because they would always miss each other. And that's planned. Because when they meet, who bows to who? Is there anything like that?
Ooh.
Is there anything like that?
I don't know whether this thing really exists, because so far as I am concerned, when Asante Otumfuo Osei celebrated the 50th anniversary of the restoration of the Asante Confederacy, he invited Okyenhene Kuntukrunku, who came to Kumasi and attended the program. And Asante-Hene was sitting in his regalia in state. And definitely the chiefs who came will have to go and pay homage to him, will have to go and greet him. So this thing, I don't think is borne out by the fact.
Okay. All right, we're still trying to appreciate, and the picture on your screen, that's when the Okyenhene actually visited Otumfuo, and this is one that the president took with the two. So let me ask you, on the back of this picture that's on the screen, is it the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who's making these two come together? Is it because of the type of presidency we have today?
I think we have to look at this against the background of a statement that Asante-Akyem made in his palace, Manhyia, when John Boadu and Wuntumi and others visited Manhyia Palace, and John Boadu introduced himself officially to Otumfuo for his blessing that he was going to contest for the General Secretary of MPP. Asante-Akyem was annoyed because he said he had information that Gabi Ochredako and Asante Tutu were doing everything possible in the seat of government, that's the Jubilee House, to undermine him, Otumfuo, and then Asante Man. And Otumfuo did not mince words. He expressed his disgust of what he had heard in public, and it was all over. And the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, who displayed maturity as a leader, and knowing that that was not actually the fact, went to Asante-Akyem and told him that he allayed his fears that nothing of that sort was happening, and following which he was able to arrange the meeting between Otumfuo in the first Otumfuo in Kumasi, and they played golf as you just shown, and then also the between Otumfuo and Okyenhene, and then this is being reciprocated today in Ofori Panin Fie Akyems. In fact, it tells you the kind of leadership that Nana Akufo-Addo is providing this country. You see, he's a good leader. It is a good leader who seeks peace. It is a good leader who seeks peace. If it had been any other person, and indeed if it is true that this Akyem mafia thing exists, if it is indeed true that Ashanti and Akyem are always trying to undo the other, he would have ignored it and allow it to fester. But he didn't do that. He quickly ran into, he quickly intervened and then proved to all and sundry that it is not true, that it is the machination of enemies of MPP and not actually in a reality. So I think Nana Akufo-Addo, the president, has done well. I must commend him for that effort.
So essentially what we are seeing today is all as a result of work done by the presidents. Sure.
Nobody can take away the credit from the president, because Asante came out openly, so everybody can attest to what happened. Obviously, he was annoyed by what he has heard, whether that was true or not. Nobody can say it. But the president, being a man he is, and knowing that that is not the case, quickly intervened and went to Otumfuo and was able to facilitate the meeting between Asante-Man and Okyeman. To me, that is what is significant.
All right. Now, Prof, you stay with us a little longer. Ohimene Teria is my colleague in Kumasi. He's been interacting with a monarchical historian, Osei Safo Kantanka, who says the visit of the Asante-Akyem Otumfuo Osei Tutu II to Okyeman is a step to reconcile the two people.
We've heard of Akyem and Asante rivalry. So if today we are coming together, whatever has happened, for us to come together as brothers, it is, of course, a great event and a major historical event.
Has this happened before, or maybe this is the first time the Ashanti king is visiting Akyem Ebuakwa, to be specific?
This is not the first time Asante king has gone to Ebuakwa. But what makes it more significant is the fact that this very visit is It's so important a visit that all attentions are on. In the olden days, each time an Asante-Akyem visited Abuakwa, it was not just a visit, but it was war. Akyem Abuakwa, to be specific, has always been on the opposing side of Asante since time immemorial. When we talk of since time immemorial, we are talking of, or we're talking about the days of when Asante defeated Denkyira. It is clear in history that all the three Akyems helped Denkyira to fight Ashanti when Ashanti wanted her independence from Denkyira. Not only that, almost all wars that Ashanti fought, Akyem helped the opposing side against the Ashanti kingdom. This is why people think that there is a rivalry between the Akyems and the Ashantis. Now, if you look at the caliber of people that make up the Akyem society and the caliber of people that make up the Asante society, there is virtually no difference between them, cultural-wise, spiritual-wise, virtually everything, physically, mentally, spiritually, in all spheres of life, our way of life is the same. Our names, our language, it will be very difficult for anybody to differentiate between an Asante and an Akyem. Very, very difficult, unless, of course, even among themselves, they cannot differentiate, unless an Asante man tells an Akyem man, I am an Asante, he sees the Ashanti man as an Akyem, and vice versa. There are about 5 or so who are very much alike. The Denkyira, the Akyem, the Asante, the Asen, the Twifo. Speak the same language, the same culture, the same tradition. But what happened was that some years back, before the Denkyira-Asante War, Akyem was a power among the Akan community. There were 3 major powers: Akyem, Akwam, and Denkyira. What happened was that Akyem was so powerful in those days that it overthrew the power of Akwam, so that there remained only 2 major powers within the Akan kingdom, Denkyira and Akyem. So for Asante to overthrow Denkyira, the remaining opposition was Akyem. Indeed, in the end, Akyem was overthrown by Asante, and all those states that were overthrown by Asante became part of the Ashanti kingdom. In 1742, that is Opoku under the king of Asante, Opokuare, there was a major war between the Ashantis and the Akyems. Before that war, Ashanti had waged a vengeance war against Akyem for helping the Denkyira people. All the 3 Akyems. We have Akyem Abuakwa, Akyem Kutuku, Akyem Bosome. There is even a 4th Akyem which is within the Ashanti kingdom, that is Asante-Akyem. But the 3 have always rebelled, led by Akyem Abuakwa, where the Asante-Akyem is going tomorrow, or paying him a visit tomorrow. Now, you can imagine that somebody who reigns would always like to remain, even if he doesn't conquer others, he doesn't want to be conquered. So this is what actually happened between the Akyem Abuakwa and Asante. In the end, it came to an end. So between 1742 under Opokuare and 1831 under Osei Tutu, that is, Akyem was virtually part of the Ashanti kingdom.
Yes, we are talking about the the war or history of the Ashanti and the Akyems in the 18th century, let's go back to 17th century, where an important incident happened between the Akyems and the Ashantis. I'm referring you to the 1717 war between the Akyems and Asantis that led to the death of Osei Tutu I, King Osei Tutu I. Can you walk me through what actually happened? Because there's belief that the Ashanti king is not allowed to cross River Pra because that is a taboo. That is what a lot of people, or many people, do believe. Is that the case?
So, as I said earlier, in 1700 to 1701, there was a major war between the Asante people and the Denchira people. What happened is that all the three Akyem kingdoms helped Denchira to fight the Ashantis. So after winning the war by the Ashantis over Denchira, what happened was the Ashanti decided to punish all those who helped the Denchira people. And that was 1817. When Ashanti had stayed for more than a decade. That is, in 1717, the Denchira War ended in 1701. So they waited until 1717 to wage a war against all the three Akyems. Before getting to the battlefield, the war was targeted first and foremost against Akyem Kutuku. Indeed, there is no Pra river in Akyem Abuakwa. So the Akyem Abuakwa, it is very clear that they came to help the Kutuku people. So in the process, before getting to the battlefield, the king of Ashanti, who was in Palanquin, riding in Palanquin to the war front, was hit by a marksman's bullet, wherever it came from, either from the sky, from the treetop, or wherever, it was unknown. But he was hit. The body was carried hurriedly back home, and Okyenhene took over. That gave him the title Okyenhene. He was leading a group of people who had lost their father. It is believed in Ashanti history that the Ashanti went forward to win that war. But having killed the king of Ashanti, still the next king of Ashanti decided to revenge.
And that was Opoku Katechi.
That was Opoku Katechi. That was 1742. That was 1742. So it is true that the king of Asante, Osei Tutu Opemsuo, or Opemsuo Osei Tutu, lost his life whilst going to fight the Akyems, whilst crossing the River Pra. Now, this Pra river is not found anywhere in Akyem Abuakwa. It is found in Akyem Kutuku. If any credit at all, it should not be given to those who don't have the Pra on their land. Those who have the Pra on their land know the terrain. They know the geography of the area. So that is where the whole thing happened. It is believed by most people that because Asante Osei Tutu died whilst crossing the Pra, or was shot whilst crossing the Pra, Osei Tutu the first. So no Asante should cross the Pra. This is not so. It is not so because after that war, it is very clear that most Ashanti kings crossed the Pra to go and fight. All that is important for the Ashanti king to do in crossing any river, not only the Pra river, is to offer prayer and then sacrifice sheep and other animals before crossing whichever river, including the River Pra. So in King Osei of Asante crossed the River Pra to go and fight in Cape Coast. The king Osei Tutu crossed the River Pra to go and fight at Katamansu, which is Accra. And in all this, you have to cross the Pra to get to Accra, cross the Pra to get to Cape Coast. There was an Ashanti king that is who also crossed to the Volta to go and fight. In all cases, going from Ashanti to the Volta, you have to cross the Pra. So why would somebody say that Asante-Akyem does not cross the Pra? There is something Asante-Akyem has to do in crossing every river, including the River Pra.
Okay. Why would the Ashanti king decide to visit a river? Because yes, Akyem played a role anytime there was a war between the whether the Kotoku or the Bosome or any other state, the Akyem state play a role, will give support to the opposing faction or the opposing side. Why would the Asante-Akyem Osei Tutu II decide to pay a visit in this modern era to Akyem?
Well, indeed, before 1831, Akyem and all the Akyems and almost the whole Ghana was part of the Ashanti Kingdom. I wouldn't say under Ashanti Kingdom. They were part of it. They had their own states, governed their own states, except that it was something like a union. So there was no an Asante ruling other people. It was making them part of them. So if you were part of Asante Kingdom, you had your own rules, culture, and tradition. You had your own, you chose your own king, or chose your own chief. You did everything on your own. All that was important was that whenever Ashanti moved, then your role as part of the kingdom is what have to show. You have to play your role. If it is supplying soldiers to go and fight a war somewhere, or if it is paying a tribute to the king of Ashanti, swearing oath of allegiance to one person who has been selected to lead the whole of the Ashanti Kingdom, that is all that was expected of you. What happened was that in 1826, there was a major war at Katamansu, that is Accra. All the coastal states together, led by 3 white nations, that is Britain, Netherlands, and then Denmark. They were at the forefront of the war. They planned and executed the war. All that they did was to bring together all the coastal states whom they found as one-time enemies to Ashanti on their side, and they fought the Ashanti, defeated Ashantis. And after the war, Britain decided, all the whites decided to go out of this part of our world, that they can no more live with the Ashanti people because of the many attempts on them, or many wars that were going on in this area. So one British called Maclean, Captain George Maclean, was left behind. He was a merchant, but he had plenty of knowledge in law and other things, surveying and all other things. What he did was that he tried to organize the coastal people into one state, one nation, and called it Gold Coast. Then in 1831, that is some close to a decade after the Katamansu War, signed a pact with the king of Ashanti, who was then called Osei Tutu, that from that day when they signed the bond, Ashanti should remain behind the Pra, and then the coastal people, including Accra Anglon and all the other states behind the Volta, including Denchira, Seshi, Wassa, Awin, all were behind this, was taken away from the Ashanti and given to the Gold Coast. So they formed that into the Gold Coast. So we had two countries within this area, the Gold Coast and Ashanti. At the end of 1880, the British, Maclean, George Maclean, decided to go back home. So the British, the British side of that nation called Gold Coast, that is what is the British side, and the Ashanti side were two countries. The British side decided that, hey, if these people should go, then we may be in trouble again with Ashantis. So let's sign another pact under Commander Hill, who came to succeed Maclean. That was the bond of 1844. They signed that pact. But in all these cases, they were still playing the other side against Ashanti.
And that's Osei Bonsu Safo Kantanka speaking there to my colleague Ohiming Teria, and it's because of the 75th anniversary of the demise of Nana Se Ofori Atta I. And this relaunch, all